What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I have a special guest with me today, André Carlisle, co-host of the Diaspora United Podcast, and to use his words, incessant women's soccer tweeter. How's everything going today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. So today's topic is the Women's World Cup. So we're going to be talking about the tournament in general, women's soccer in general. We'll be talking about the U.S. women's national team, of course, with some focus on some of the other teams, of course, because there's a bunch of other teams in this tournament we want to cover. And we're about 4 days out from the start of the tournament in the tail end of July. And it's going to be kicking off in New Zealand and Australia in just a couple days. So before we jump into the actual tournament and some of the in-depth talk, I love to ask American soccer fans, how did you become a soccer fan? And I guess when did you become a soccer fan?
That's a good question. It actually took a long time, which was kind of a standard case, at least for most Americans who've been around the sport for a little bit. But yeah, I didn't grow up introduced to the sport except from like a very young age when I was like 6. Played on a team called the Ninjas, and we lost every game. And the whole idea was just to get us to run around on grass for a little bit and tire ourselves out. So there was like no strategy, no technique. We weren't really coached. weren't really coached. We weren't coached at all. And so I was just like, all right, well, if it's just running back and forth on a pitch, I'm not really into this. So basically, it took close to 20 years after that for me to be reintroduced to the sport in a real way. Started with some coworkers that were just saying like, hey, we've got a rec team and we need some bodies. And I was like, oh, I can run. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I've got no skills. So I just went out there and played. And I was like, okay, I kind of like the technique of this, the skill of this. This is cool. And then finally started being able to watch soccer like on TV, which was a big deal, getting some of the European leagues, because especially for me as a black dude, it was just kind of like, I don't really see anybody black males playing the game, especially like in the States. It felt like a very upper middle class sport. And so once I saw that, then I was like, okay, now I feel like there's space for me here. Like now I feel like this is a passion of mine. And I just kept continue to watch and kind of get obsessed with the game as it went on.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. It's funny that like in the U.S., it's this upper middle class sport that has all these barriers to entry, and everywhere else in the world, it's you see kids playing barefoot in the streets, and it's just anybody can
Mhm.
play it at any time. So specifically on the women's side of things, I know you talked about being able to see the European leagues on TV super easily, and I think we're living in like the golden age of that, despite some of the streaming issues that we have. But on the women's side of things, what drew you to the women's game, and when did you become, again, to use your words, this incessant women's soccer tweeter?
So it was really the U.S. women's national team's success over the years. Like I really loved watching the team. I loved like learning about the players, but it was tough because you only introduce yourself to them every 4 years, and so it's kind of you didn't really follow them. That kind of wasn't the culture until there were a few domestic leagues that were started, but many of them folded, and now we have the NWSL. So that changed things. But what really started it was looking at that team, how successful they were, the talents and personalities that they had. And then once the NWSL was established, it was like, okay, now you get a chance to watch these players week in and week out, like throughout a season. And that's fun. Like you look at the global landscape of soccer, and I know MLS is growing. I know soccer in this country is growing, but there is no equivalent to the NWSL. Like the NWSL is one of the most talented, the most competitive, top to bottom, hands down, domestic leagues in the world, and we have it right here. And so for me, that was a big one. Just knowing that I had access to this, and I love the sport, and of course, I also am very aware of a lot of the social impact of sports, social causes throughout sports, and felt like the women's game have so many intersections with a lot of that. And then, of course, there was also black women players who were coming along who I was like, they talk about a lot of the white players, but you don't talk about the black players as much. So thinking about Brianna Scurry and what she did, we always see the Brandy Chastain photo, which yeah, she had to score the goal, but without that save, then it just goes back and forth. And so Yeah, it was just a matter of all of that coming together. And I was like, you know what? I want to, one, the athletes are dope as hell. Like they're very good. But
Mhm.
two, like this hits a lot of the intersections of care and cause that I really like.
For sure, for sure. And I think, especially what you talked about, I think just from our limited interactions on social media, I think we're pretty aligned socially and things like that, and politically. And it seems almost like, which is crazy to say, but rooting for this women's national team and supporting women's soccer has almost become like it's associated with being a leftist, and there's some the deep undercurrent of the social and political activism that these women are at the forefront of. And it's, I mean, there's no way to divide the sport from the political aspect of things, but I think being this, big women's soccer supporter, big women's soccer fan, it just goes, it's like part and parcel of supporting women's rights and some of these other things. So I totally see that angle. And then what you said about the World Cup and wanting to follow these players, these total badass players, outside of the U.S. concept or the national team concept, is it's like the blueprint. It's the
Yeah.
dream. I think that's what the U.S. was trying to do when hosting the men's World Cup in '94, and then the women's World Cup, I believe, it was 1990. So it's very similar, where you're that blueprint of the fan that they capture in the World Cup, and then you go on and do that. So in terms of the growth of the sport, how has the access and the ability to watch these teams and these players changed in recent years? I know it's exploded. I know they've gotten some TV deals recently, some streaming deals. So how's that changed in the last few years?
Oh, tremendously. And it's been a lot of work behind the scenes from parts of the NWSL, but the majority of it from the players. Um, the players have known that they have deserved a domestic league that they could perform in, and that they could carry a domestic league, that they were good enough to do that. And we know that because every 4 years we see these players come together and they're good enough to capture the entire nation. And now they've won back to back World Cups. They have four in total, and they're going for a fifth. No other team that I think of, men's or women's, has had a chance to win. Mm, Maybe had a chance, but have never won three straight. And so having four is amazing. Being on the cusp of five, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, so in terms of the growth, it really, the key thing was cleaning up the NWSL. There were a lot of domestic leagues that rose and folded for a lot of different reasons that we don't have a lot of time to get into. But it wasn't the talent of the players. It was mismanagement. It was straight up bad shit happening. It was not good. And we know from a lot of stories that happened in the past or came out 2 3 years ago about the NWSL, that was very much important to get that right and the response to that right. Got a new commissioner in. There's been understanding these things. There were multiple investigations that went on, punishments handed down, things being revealed. A CBA, a first ever CBA. Think about that. The league had been around for close to 9 10 years and just got its first CBA. So that was really important to do in terms of protecting players. And then, of course, expansion. I think bringing in, markets like Los Angeles, bringing in a market like San Diego, has been massive. And so some of the players, especially, Washington Spirit with Michelle Kang, her coming in as an owner, wanting to spend money, being aggressive and wanting to build a team, build infrastructure of a team as well, like professionalizing the environments. Very, very important. So you go from all of that to now the athletes just have the platform to just perform. And that's why we're seeing audience numbers shoot up. We're seeing, viewership shoot up, attendance at stadiums shoot up. Like everybody's doing so much, like everybody's breaking records almost every other week. And it's great to see. But what it really shows you is that the audience has already been there. It's just been waiting for this opportunity. And now, of course, with the World Cup coming up, it's just that, to be honest, COVID messed things up because in 2019 we're ready for
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
But now it feels like we're here, we did the growth, and I'm really excited about what the landscape will look like even after this World Cup, which I expect to be great.
For sure. Yeah, there's always been an appetite for high level women's soccer, high level women's sports in general. I think we're
Yeah.
seeing a growth in WNBA, just alongside the NWSL. So the appetite's always been there. And I think, to your point, we're finally seeing like the maturation of women's leagues, because people are finally seeing the potential and there's money behind it, and there's the professionalism that comes with it. So whether it's a CBA, whether it's a streaming deal with CBS or whatever, we're seeing these things come to fruition. And like you said, week over week, there's incredible growth, and year over year, there's going to be more and more growth. So let's transition. Let's start talking about the World Cup because I think we've set the stage. You talked about the dominance of the national team. They're coming off back-to-back World Cup wins. They have 4 in total. So let's talk about the expectations for this team. So coming in, I think they've won like 9 straight in their past few friendlies in the She Believes Cup, but there was a string of defeats in 2022 to some pretty high level opponents. Is there a cause for concern going to this World Cup because of those defeats, or should we look more into the 9 or 8 game win streak, whatever that we're going into the cup with?
It depends on how much delusion you like with your sports analysis. That's what I'll say. So for the people who just want to, root for, the flag and the patriotic aspect of it and think like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead. Like the team is still very, very talented. They could figure things out. To be completely honest, tactically speaking, in 2019, they weren't really the most tactically sound team anyway. They just happened to have a player like Sam Mewis who was absolutely unreal and did a lot. And of course, Julie Ertz was there. And then they had that 2019 team was fueled by something different. There were so many fights that team was fighting, including the White House and their own federation, that they captured something different in 2019, and that
Yeah.
was really fun. So they
That's
overcame
what
a
it
lot of
became, almost like
issues.
an act of resistance to root for your country's soccer team, which was just, we were living in a bizarre world at the time.
Yes, it
But yeah,
was really silly. So yeah, so that team was fueled by something else, and if you're kind of looking at it objectively, they didn't have the best game plan for some of the teams that they ended up facing. They basically went through all of the big teams in Europe to win that trophy, which was awesome. This team doesn't have those similar fights to have, which is good. Caveat that's a good thing, but there have been some things under new coach Vlatko Andonovski, which has been consistent in his tenure. So for me, I would say it's not the past like 8, 9 games in terms of wins. The performances in a lot of those games have not been good. You talked about the late 2022 period as well. That was not good. Talk about the Olympics, which was his first major international tournament. That was not good. They won bronze and had to scrap for that. They beat Australia 4-3 to get a bronze medal. So there are still a lot of issues with this team. Most of them in midfield and the stylistic approach not really fitting the personnel. So are they still one of the most talented teams in the world? Absolutely. But where women's soccer is at right now, that just might not be enough.
yeah, they're the betting favorite by far. I think they're plus 250 to lift the cup.
Yeah.
So they obviously come in with the highest expectations. So you talked about some of the issues in midfield, some of the issues with the squad. Let's start at the back. Is there a goalkeeper controversy, or is Alyssa Nair going to hold down that number 1 spot?
Alyssa Nair is going to hold down the number 1 spot, is what I'm guessing. Of course, it will depend on performances, but I don't anticipate her losing that outright. It's been a rough club season for her. The Chicago Red Stars, they have conceded a lot of goals. She has been in goal for most of their games, and so that hasn't been great. But there are some other issues going on with the Red Stars that may have impacted that, including them losing all of their midfield, which their midfield anchors were really important, and they lost all 3 of them. So that was a problem. That's kind of like the main problem. And then of course Mallory Swanson got injured, who was their star attacker. So yes, the team has overall issues. But yeah, to answer your question, I expect to see Alyssa Nair, Casey Murphy from North Carolina Courage. She's a very interesting prospect, mid-20s, 6 feet, 6'1". She's very quick as well, gets down good. So like I expect her to be the goalkeeper of the future. Just don't think that future will happen just yet.
Sure, sure, and I think that's an interesting point. I think I'll touch on that as well. Were there any notable absences and some surprise inclusions in the final squad? We talk about whether it's injury, form, whatever it may be. Let's start with notable absences. So, who do you wish the U.S. was taking to Australia again? Whether it's through injury or form, they were left off.
Oh well, I almost feel like we have to do two categories here because there's a
Sure,
lot of injured players that's unfortunate. So from the injured list, Katerina Macario was supposed to be the new number 9. 9.5 or number 10, whatever you want to call it. She can do it all in the center of the pitch. She's an exceptional player. They did a lot of work to get her U.S. eligible in time for this, and unfortunately tore her ACL while playing with Lyon. But she's been unreal from her days at Stanford to going straight from Stanford to Lyon, the best club team in Europe, and dominating there. In her second year with them, she led them in goals. And they won the Champions League over there. Like she's an unreal player. Mallory Swanson, who I just mentioned, she was supposed to be on the left wing. She had been so good, like developing her game. I know her name's been around, formerly Pugh, if people may remember, but she got married and her last name is Swanson now. And her game has just elevated so much. She was so good, so direct, and she got very good at placing her shots. And that was the last step to make her as dangerous as she could be. She tore her patellar tendon in April in a friendly against Ireland, and that was devastating because she's going to miss the World Cup. And then in defense, Becky Sauerbrunn, longtime center back, leader of the team, captain of the team. Her being injured and not being able to make it really hurts. Her ability to organize. Of course, she's in her late 30s now, but she's still, in terms of her ability to organize, dissect plays, and be in the right place at the right time defensively. There's no one better than her and a U.S. kid right now, and it's a real shame she's going to miss this World Cup.
Yeah, that's one point I actually forgot to mention. I think I sent to you in the notes, but yeah, we've seen that age and experience at center back. I mean, as fellow Chelsea fans, we've seen Thiago Silva is still one of the best defenders in the world because of that experience and ability to read the game. So, who is her immediate replacement, and how do you think they'll stack up to this person that was the captain and the leader of this team?
Yeah, so the replacement duo is going to be Naomi Girma and Alana Cook. So what was kind of happening with Andonovski throughout is he would kind of juggle. Naomi Girma became kind of like the main star, the primary starter, and he would kind of filter in Cook and Sauerbrunn with them. And the team looked a little bit better than it did with Girma and Sauerbrunn than it has with Girma and Cook. Again, this goes back to Sauerbrunn being super experienced, being very good organizationally. But we'll have to see. I think the connection between Girma and Cook is going to be important. They're going to need to get that right and improve that to the level that it would be at with Sauerbrunn and probably even beyond. I think you do get a bit of a bonus in that at this point in their careers, Alana Cook is a bit more athletic than what Becky Sauerbrunn can be. So that is a bonus. But of course, you have to use it correctly and at the right times and all of that stuff. So we'll see how they grow throughout the tournament. But to me, that is a major. Without Sauerbrunn, that's a big question mark because we don't really have a third choice center back that's been playing center back week in and week out. It's basically going to be up to Girma and Cook, and hopefully we don't get any injuries there.
And were there any snubs, any players that you think should be on that plane or should have been on that plane? Because I think they just arrived this morning. That should have been on the squad, but were not.
Yeah, this one is another deep question because there are still some players that are recovering, like Kristen Press. She tore her ACL and she's been on the road to recovery, but she gave an interview with Football America, I think it was a month ago, and she said her goal is to go to the World Cup. She wants to be selected. She still hasn't stepped onto the pitch yet, post-injury with Angel City, and of course did not make it. Now, where is she in her, recovery? Don't know. The World Cup is a long tournament. It starts July 20th. The final game, the championship match will be August 20th. If the team, goes throughout the group stages or whatever and Press can't play, okay, fine. But if she can, in the knockout rounds, might be a great player to take, but that didn't happen. I also look at players like, another actual true six like Sam Coffey. I think she would have been a very good player to take. He's brought her into camp before, but then dropped her and then brought her to New Zealand, which kind of was a good sign at first. And then she didn't play a minute in those matches early this year, and she wasn't on the team since. So that's a little frustrating because I think we don't really have a number six with the profile of her. She's very much a team metronome. She kind of sits deep, wins the ball, keeps the ball moving side to side, very good at picking up spaces, picking out passes. Fun fact about her is right now in the NWSL, I believe she either is first or second in assists from the defensive midfield position. So she is excellent. And it is a shame that we don't get to see her at the World Cup.
Yeah, it's tough. 23 spots. You got to make tough decisions. There's always going to be folks looking on the bubble on the outside looking in. Were there any surprise inclusions that you thought maybe not shouldn't have made the squad, but we're not favorites to make the squad, but again are in New Zealand or Australia right now?
Yeah, there were two. I think the biggest two that stand out, well, there's probably more than two for me personally, but I'll go to Alyssa Thompson, 18 years old, was the number one
Heard a
draft
lot
pick in the
about her.
NWSL this year. Yeah, she's very fun, but it was kind of a surprise because all of this is happening for her very fast, and she's going to be playing in her first World Cup at the age of 18. That's wild. So she was a surprise, but also Savannah DeMello is a surprise. Attacking midfielder, can also play some center mid as well. But she was very much a surprise, but she has been incredible since her rookie season. She kind of hit the league running and has been one of the best shooters and long range goal scorers in the league. She's also extremely aggressive. Her pressing is great. She wins fouls a lot. She makes a nuisance of herself, and she's also got the audacity to take long distance shots. She's got great service delivery into the box as well. But he kind of did the same thing with Coffee with DeMello. Brought her in, played her a little bit. She wasn't even capped until the send off match against Wales. And so he brought her in and then just kind of ignored the fact that she existed until suddenly, oh, let's go ahead and bring her to the World Cup. And it was like, probably could have kept her in camp to get her more familiar with everything the team wants to do, but okay, I'm not the coach. All right. So I would say those two are the most surprising inclusions.
Yeah, like I said, I've been hearing a ton about Alyssa and the crazy potential that she has, and people are talking about her having the potential to be the best, U.S. Women's National Team player ever. But I guess we can pump the brakes on that. She's still a baby, can't even drink legally, so we'll pump the brakes on that.
Right.
So you talked about Murphy being the goalkeeper of the future, and I think there's an interesting dynamic at play here, which I think is pretty normal for any high level national team. It's kind of the old guard versus the new guard. And who do you think that Adanovsky is going to be relying on? Do you think is he the type to roll the dice with Thompson or some of these other younger players, or is he going to stick with these stalwarts, some of these older players in their mid to late 30s?
So this is the other frustrating thing about Andonovsky's tenure is that he was brought in to really facilitate a transition, a stylistic transition, number one, but also personnel transition. Now, obviously, we just talked about a lot of players who are injured. It's really hard to bring players in, change the style if some of the best players and key players that you've been leaning on are no longer available. But you look at the talent that is still there, particularly in attack and even some in midfield. I mentioned DeMello and Coffee. I even think Jalen Howe has kind of figured things out as well. She's a defensive midfielder in for Louisville, and she's just a wrecking ball. I mean, if you want, you're like your Julie Ertz replacement of just flying around winning the ball, there she is. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I think he has to rely on the problem right now is that the team is very predictable, and when you put very familiar players out there who are a little older, they're going to be even a little bit easier to understand in terms of their movements and what they want to do. They've been on the national stage, international stage for a very long time. So I'm talking about maybe like a Megan Rapinoe, talking about even Alex Morgan, even to a certain extent, Lindsay Oran, because I think she's kind of hampered a bit by some mobility issues because I don't believe her knee injury is like, I just think she had a knee injury a little while ago, and it's though she's been okay to play, I don't think it's ever been 100%. And so I think that's been an issue as well. So then you look at, okay, who are players that can change the game? And they're players that the world hasn't quite been introduced to yet. So they're like Sophia Smith, who's incredible. Trinity Rodman, also incredible. You mentioned Alyssa Thompson. Agreed. She's very, very good for her, especially for her age. I mean, she's exceptional. So I think you have to look at even Lynn Williams. This is Lynn Williams. She's 30, but this is going to be her first World Cup. So that's also amazing. But she fits very well with the profile attackers that we have. But the problem is right now We have a profile of attackers that is young, energetic. They want to get out, they want to run. And we have kind of Andonovski's midfield structure that wants more control, wants to kind of play a more measured game, a slower game. And that's really not what they want to do. So there's this constant disconnect, and why the team looks kind of stuck in the mud a lot of times. And it's going to be interesting to see who he calls on. But Alyssa Thompson started at left wing for the send-off match. I thought that was a really big kind of maybe a hint about her role, kind of thinking that she's not just going to go there as an impact sub. But again, we'll have to see once we kind of get really into the group stages. I think the group stage game against Netherlands is really going to show us who Andonovski feels like is his best 11.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen plenty of times players kind of announce themselves on the national stage or the international stage. Young players,
Yeah.
they come in with low expectations or even a lot of hype, and they live up to that hype or exceed it. So, I mean, Trinity Rodman, I'm mesmerized by her as a player. She's just incredible with the skill and the physicality and the power and all that stuff, and the intelligence and the runs that she makes. So, like you said, I think it's just a matter of trust. And I mean, I think we've seen that's especially the more dominant teams are willing to control the game for, the first 60, 75 minutes and then roll the dice with some super subs and throw on some of these younger kids to cause chaos and run at tired defenders and that sort of thing. So if you could sum up the identity of this team, like the tactical identity of this team, I know you said it's a little stunted. They're stuck in the mud a bit. They seem like they're in that transition phase, which is pretty similar to the U.S. with Klinsmann a few years back. But yeah, if you could sum up the identity of the team, what would it be?
Confused.
Okay.
I know that's not great, but that's really what we have right now. It's kind of taken Andonovski a bit of time to realize that, Andy Sullivan provides a different skill set as a defensive midfielder than Julie Ertz. So if you're going to play her, Lindsay Oran, and Rose Lavelle or Ashley Sanchez as the attacking midfielder, then you need to make sure there's a defensive base there. You can't have Lindsay Oran basically being a second attacking midfielder. She needs to kind of stay back and help move the ball around midfield. They need to pick out passes that are either through balls or setting up some of the attacking talent to do what they do best. They like to run it. They like to run. They like to run behind lines. They have to like to run at defenders. They like to do these things. So you got to catch them in stride. And the only way to do that is not by trying to pass the ball to them, kind of like you would Alex Morgan, back to goal, ball to feet, or ball to chest or whatever. So it's not that. And right now we haven't seen a consistent game plan from them in a full game that acknowledges these things. And I would like to see it because I think the team could still be extremely dominant. We just haven't seen it yet. And the hope is we see it during the World Cup, but that's kind of like almost very scary. You want to see this before the World Cup. You don't want to have to figure things out during a World Cup because you're going to have a lot of other things you need to figure out during a World Cup.
Yeah, it's cramming the night before the final, pulling an all-nighter. But we've seen it happen. We've seen teams, especially teams as talented as this, and despite some of the other teams in the world catching up, I think they're still obviously the most talented team in the world, and they just Andonovski and his staff just need to figure out how to put the pieces together and make these things fit. Like I said, we've seen teams figure it out over the course of a long tournament, but hopefully, they're able to figure it out early on in the group stage, and they're not scrambling when it comes to the knockout rounds, which they should make. So if you could rate your confidence level out of 10 in them winning this cup, I know you said they're confused, things like that, but give me a number. Just throw one out there.
Oof, 1 to 10. Oh, it is so hard because nobody's done it to win 3 World Cups in a row. My confidence 4 or 5.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's gonna be tough. It's just gonna be tough. I think, and another thing, I think we'll get to this, but it's not just the the big major European teams that have, like, the conversation has always been about those major European teams like closing the gap to the US. While that has been true, and we saw that they struggled against England, they struggled against Spain, they struggled against Germany at the end of 2022. But it's other teams are getting so much better too. The teams around, like Brazil, like Australia, there's so many teams that are getting so good right now that like I mentioned, Australia it was 4-3 that they almost got the bronze medal over the U.S. And that was Australia that is the Australia that we're going to see at the World Cup is much improved from that one at the Olympics. So like there are a lot of teams who have closed the gap, not just the major European ones. And I think it's going to be a surprising World Cup to a lot of people, but it's also going to be fun.
For sure. And I think Australia is just on the outside looking in of the top 5 in terms of betting odds. So there's a lot of faith in them, of course, as one of the host countries. So they'll have that boost that comes with that. So we wouldn't be surprised to see them make a deep run. And I think, I mean, I don't know how much you'll be able to take from the US's opening game against Vietnam, but you said that game against the Netherlands was their second match. That's the one that you'll be looking to. So maybe if they're able to have a smooth victory or dominant victory there, maybe we'll revisit your 4 or 5 rating.
Yes.
But you brought up some of these other teams. I think this is a good segue to talk about some of the other contenders for this. So have you looked at the tape, the groups, and picked a group of death? I'm leaning towards Group D, but I don't know. Do you have another one in mind?
Group D with China, Denmark, England, and Haiti.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I think that Haiti squad, even though they had to win the playoff to get here, they've got some dangerous players. Melchi Dumornay was just signed by Lyon as their star signing this summer. She is unbelievable and extremely scary. This is an interesting one because I look at this and I think like there aren't too many like straightforward. I mean, there are some straightforward groups, but there's some really, really tasty ones out there. Like even Group B with Australia, Canada, Nigeria, and the Republic of Ireland. Nigeria has, unfortunately, they have a lot going on with their federation. There are some issues. They're not as supporters as they could be, but they have some ballers. Asisat Oshuala should be with the team, and she's been starting for Barcelona, which has been scoring basically 100 plus goals in their league seasons. So like she is incredible. There's a lot of good players, good attacking talent in Nigeria. The Republic of Ireland frustrated the hell out of the U.S. when they played them in their friendlies in April. So that's a tough team to sleep on. Costa Rica, Japan, Spain, and Zambia. Zambia has been showing a lot throughout this. Now, obviously, these like warm-up matches aren't the World Cup, clearly, but they drew 3-3 with Switzerland, and they beat Germany 3-2. So like Zambia is a team that's great. Barbara Banda and Rachel Kunandanji are just like those two have a real attacking prowess, and you're just like, if some of these teams don't get it right and put themselves in a hole early, you could see them dropping points, and that could be pretty devastating in such a group. But I'm kind of leaning towards maybe your Group D, but man, I could make a case for maybe 2 or 3 other groups here.
It was tough. I was reading through and I couldn't pick one, so I was like, let me lean towards this one. This seems like the most group of deathy, but like you said,
to be honest, Vietnam 2-1. Germany only beat them 2-1, and Germany had to score a very late goal to get the winner. So like, and Vietnam had a chance. They had chances to either go up in the match when it was 1-1, or equalize. So like, I expect the U.S. to beat them, but Netherlands and Portugal need to really like be on it because, like I said, the gap for everybody is closing, and it's really, really fun to see, but also going to make like trying to bet on this tournament like good luck.
For sure. So let's talk about some of the other top contenders. So the top 5 in terms of betting odds or betting favorites. So the U.S. obviously, then England, Spain, Germany, France, and Australia. So the 4 European powers, and then the host nation. Of those favorites, again, you talked about betting on it would be difficult, but if you had to pick one of those other favorites, who would you lean towards?
Ooh. I know I've just brought up 2 instances in which Germany has not looked great, but they are the most complete team and the deepest team, I think, right now. They have a whole lot of talent at every level, and they've been very, very good. They were in the Euros final against England at home. They pushed England really hard. It took some pretty incredible play from England to get that win and be champions. Germany also has one of the best young players in the world. People wonder who's the next best 6. Like, if you're only familiar with Julie Ertz and what she does at the number 6 role, she plays for Germany. It's Lena Oberdorf. She is outrageously talented and so good. So if she's healthy and she's playing, consistently, especially throughout the knockouts, Germany are going to be very, very difficult to beat because she just controls everything in midfield. Just one of those like supernatural mobility, ball winning skills. She's very good as well as picking out passes. Toward the end of last season, she started scoring long range goals too. So that might be fun if she hits a banger or two this tournament.
Yeah. Good rule of thumb is never bet against the Germans in a major tournament. You'll probably do all right. So,
Facts.
in terms of dark horse teams, so not necessarily, you don't have to get hot takey and pick a winner, but who do you see as one of these teams on the outside looking in that could make a deep run, maybe to the quarters or even the third place game?
I unfortunately think people are sleeping on Canada a bit, which is unfortunate because they won the Olympics. They are the ones who won the gold medal. They beat Sweden at the Olympics and won the gold medal. So, like, I think Canada is an extremely good team. It depends on getting goal scoring. They're defensively very resolute, but they're going to have to figure out routes to goal. And I think if they can get their goal scoring going, they could beat anybody legitimately. They're very good. I think Japan is another team that is exceptional. They have like during the She Believes Cup, which happened just a few months ago, they trotted out this very interesting three back formation, and it was so good. They have personnel that suits it well. They have the technical midfielders who can do it, and they have some very fun attacking talent. Micah Hamano is an 18-year-old who Chelsea signed, and she's been on loan with Hammarby in Sweden, and she's has some amazing highlights already. It was just her first season there. She's 18, so she could be great. June Indo, we've seen her with Angel City a bit. She's exceptional too. A really good attacking player, except like really, really tactical and good on the ball. Fast, great strike as well. So like I'm really excited about Japan and to see if they continue to grow in that formation because I just think the formation alone, if they drill it down and get good at it, it's going to confuse some teams. But for me, the biggest one is Brazil.
Mm.
Brazil have a squad. They have a squad. A lot of the Brazilians came to the NWSL and have immediately like put in top-notch performances. Like Adriana is killing it. We know Dabinia and Marta have been there for a while. You got Berninha playing it outside back at Gotham. She's been great. And so, like, yeah, I think Brazil, Marta has already said that this is her last World Cup. I don't know what better motivation you can get than win a World Cup for Marta before she retires. But like, they have that motivation for this and they all want it. I saw, I can't remember the player. I think it was Adriana, but there was a player who walked in from the airport and she was wearing like an airbrush Marta shirt. They're all in on this. So like, I'm excited to see how they're going to perform because that team they start clicking, they're going to cause some real problems to just about anybody they play.
It's a pretty solid trio. You picked basically the team with the GOAT of women's soccer. You picked the
Yep.
defending Olympic champions, and then you picked Japan, who I think won, was it 2 World Cups ago? They were the
Yep.
champions. So, and they're the 9th, 10th, and 11th best odds to win. So
Mm.
I get people really are sleeping on them, but I was
Yeah.
surprised to see, especially Canada and Japan, that low.
Yeah.
Brazil, I mean, they're always in the mix. So all three of those teams are really always in the mix, especially Japan and Brazil. So are there any? You mentioned a ton of players so far, but is there anyone that you're especially looking forward to watching? Maybe someone that you don't see regularly in the NWSL, or maybe someone you see every week. But is there anyone that you're especially excited about watching?
Yeah, this is going to be a very fun World Cup for like some players who are going to announce themselves to like an international audience. So I think starting at home, Sophia Smith and Trinity Rodman as well. But I think Sophia Smith will probably be slightly more important when we really get into it. But yeah, the both of those players, I think that they've heard us in the U.S. talk about them a lot, tweet about them a lot. And they've seen some highlights, which, the NWSL is very transitional. So it's like, how will it translate to international play? But like, I think those two are super, super skilled. And I'm very excited for people to see them and to see what they can produce. With England, Lauren James, another attacking player. She is probably the best dribbler in the game right now. It's impossible to get the ball off of her. She is so good and she just goes by players. It's like the ball is stuck to her foot and she just jogs by players. She goes right, she goes left. It doesn't really matter. And she's added goal scoring and assisting too in her first season with Chelsea. She's been, second season, she was injured for the first and they were having her recover. But yeah, she's been amazing. So yeah, I'm really looking at her as well. Um, let me see who else. I think Germany has a couple good like younger wingers as well. Like Yula Brand, I think is really important player and going to be interesting. So Clara Bull as well. Like there are going to be a lot of young players. I think this is almost like a transition World Cup too, because we're so familiar with some of the names that have been around for a long time. And I think after this World Cup, we're going to have a brand new set of names that are going to become like the upper echelon that are like household names. And when you mention women's soccer, these names are going to come to the forefront. So like I'm really, really, really excited to see these players play. Oh, also have to shout out Guro Reiten. I know there's a Chelsea slant to some of this, but Guro Reiten for Norway, I think Norway's defense scares me. But if she connects with Ada Hegerberg, and then of course you have Caroline Graham Hansen on the right side, Norway could score goals on anybody. Now, people, if you pay attention to the Euros, you'll know that didn't go so well for them in the Euros. I think England beat them like 8-0. It was really bad. But we'll see. They got a new coach now. They got some new players that they have in different positions than they had in that Euros. But yeah, I'm hoping to see better performance. Do I think they'll go deep? Absolutely not. But they should do some fun stuff.
Awesome. I mean, you mentioned the Chelsea slant. I think just it goes back to our original point of folks getting more into women's soccer. I think a big part of it is the growth and the launch of a lot of these women's teams in England and in Europe, where you have a established brand, Chelsea, Manchester United, Lyon, Barcelona, and then they're throwing their marketing power, their dollars or euros behind these women's teams. So you have a lot of folks that are diehard Chelsea fans that maybe watch the women's team every now and then. They just root for the badge kind of thing, and they're going to watch the Women's World Cup. And of course, for me, as a big Chelsea fan, just like you, I'm going to be rooting for these players and seeking out players that have starred for Chelsea and are playing for other teams. So there's that element of it, which I think is really awesome, and it's a more recent thing, which is again part of the growth, not just of women's soccer in the U.S. but globally, and that's awesome to see. And speaking of Chelsea, I know again you are a big Chelsea fan, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's touch on what you think of some of the moves this year, this off season for both the women's team and the men's team. I know the men's team is kind of down in the dumps. It's not the most exciting thing to talk about, which is it's hilarious to see the counterpoint between the women's team just winning trophies, just racking up wins, and then the men's team struggling. So, yeah, what's been some of your favorite moves or some of the things that you've seen this summer that you appreciate?
Yeah, so I'll start positive, which is going to be starting with the women's team.
Yes, please.
Emma Hayes got her transfer business done early, and she did a great job. I don't know if they're done, but she did a great job with what's already been announced. I think if you're watching for Chelsea connections, Shoka Nuskin for Germany is a player to watch. She'll probably be playing center back for Germany, but she will likely be in midfield for Chelsea. She's a great young player. Very, very good on the ball, very defensively sound. I think it's gonna be very fun to see how she fits in because that's a profile of player they've needed. Emma Hayes' goal is to win the Champions League. So this is what every single one of these signings gets them much closer to winning the Champions League. Then she brought in my favorite player right now is Catarina Macario. Talked about her. She's been out with an ACL injury, but when she is back and she is on the pitch with Chelsea, with Sam Kerr, with Lauren James, Guro Reiten, it's going to be fun as hell. Like, I am super excited. And then Ashley Lawrence, probably the best fullback, the best right back. She can play right or left in the women's game. There may be a couple more who have an argument, but nobody's going to argue against how good Ashley Lawrence is. She's great. Absolutely great. Good defending, good positionally, smart when getting an attack, when to get up and down the flank. She is one of the best. So just like those players right there, I am so ready to watch this Chelsea team. It's almost like if this was any other international tournament but a World Cup, I'd be like, I don't care about this. Like I just want to watch these players with Chelsea. But yeah, I'm really excited about what they've done on the men's side.
That sounds about right.
Exactly. That's it. No, I mean, I'm frustrated about the Mount situation. I really was hoping that they would finally stop playing games and come to some sort of agreement. And the fact that that did not happen, he's the Manchester United player, that just hurts. Losing Kai Havertz to Arsenal, that hurts too. I think we never really gave him the structure in which he best performs. And I think Arsenal's going to do that, and it's going to hurt like hell because he's going to ball out. And it's going to be like, well, why couldn't you do that for Chelsea? Well, the reason is we didn't really put him in position to do these things. But we did get a Champions League trophy. We're just going to have to hold tight because that's going to be rough. But I mean, I am also excited about the future. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of attack, but hopefully they get the Moises Caicedo signing done. I think Fernandez and Caicedo is an incredible midfield. And from there, I do back Poch to build on that. So I'm excited to see him. I almost like, he has to be quite a good manager if you're going to come from a former Spurs manager and you're actually going to make us excited that he's here. So I am excited that he's here. I think the way that he had that team playing, I mean, they were in the Champions League final, which was kind of wild. So he is a big club manager, even though the club he chose to do that with initially was Spurs in the Premier League. But I'm excited to see what he can do. I just hope they continue to back him. Trimming the squad is important. I'm glad we've got some departures, though Mount makes me sad, but it's definitely building. Would like to know who's going to score the goals, but I kind of back Poch in terms of kind of getting what he wants. Nicholas Jackson is an interesting player, but I don't know if he's quite ready to be like a primary goal scorer for Chelsea. If Chelsea has ambitions of getting back into the top four, getting back into European competitions, we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask for him. Yeah. I think, on the women's side, we've come to expect greatness and they continuously deliver. We have maybe the best manager in the world, one of the best teams in the world consistently. They're always in the mix in Europe and just racking up the titles. For Mount and Havertz, I think they're just the victims of this weird transitionary period that the club was forced into with Abramovich not really wanting to sell, kind of being forced to sell. And you go through this weird season where the team doesn't have an identity. You have a new owner trying to figure things out on the fly. And of course, if you're a young player, you're just like, I'm not going to sit around here and waste my career, my prime years on a team that, again, doesn't have an identity, doesn't have a manager that's capable of doing this. But like you said, Pochettino is a big club manager. I'm excited for him. He took Spurs to, heights they've never seen before, probably will never get back to, with the Champions League final, with finishing second to Leicester a few years back. So he's more than capable.
Of us.
Yeah, courtesy of us. Eden Hazard, there you go. So I am very excited for that, and the fact that he's bringing, I think, a winning identity back to the team. And I'm not 100% sold on Bowley, but at least he's given the team a blank check almost, which you always appreciate with a new owner. So we'll see. But I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic about the team. I think we could say that. But yeah, I'm excited. There's about another month to go before the season starts, so there's going to be some signings and departures in the works in the meantime. But thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
No,
I just wanted to throw out real quick on the men's side. Not that I want to defend billionaires, because I really don't. That's not really. I'm not in the business of doing that. But there is the truth that the Chelsea men's team has needed a refresh for a while, and the fact that it's waited so long, that's why it hurts so much. And trying to get it right from here is tough. So this season, the past season was horrible. We'll have to see what direction they're building the next season, but I don't expect an immediate return. If they're true about this and they invest long-term and they're looking at, which I guess they are, with signing these 7 and 8 year contracts for young players, then we're on a good path, but they're at a point now where they have to get things right. They spent a lot of money early and got a lot of things wrong. Graham Potter was wrong. There were some signings that came in that were wrong, and they got to get things right now. So the pressure's on. They have plenty of money, but you have to make right decisions. And I don't know if letting go of Mount or Havertz was the right decision, but we'll see. They got some time to make up for some of these things, and we'll see. But I've been frustrated about that team for a bit, and though they could scrap and still put in a good performance against big teams, we've known for a while, in the back of our minds, this isn't a team that's capable of challenging Liverpool or Manchester City, and we got to get back to that, because that's where the club should be.
And it wouldn't be the Chelsea men's team without drama every year and crazy storylines. It's just
chaos and trophies.
It's a Chelsea thing. That's what, chaos and trophies. That should be the official club slogan. I love it. So thank you so much, Andre. I love the passion. I love the expertise. You clearly know your stuff when it comes to women's soccer. And again, the passion shines through the screen or through the speaker. So where can we follow you? Where can we find your work and, dive more into the world of women's soccer with you?
Yeah, so appreciate that. While Twitter still works, you can find me on Twitter at 838 underscore Carlisle. That's spelled a little weird, but it's Carlisle. Diaspora United Podcast is another place to go. I'm going to the World Cup for a couple weeks, so follow
You should have led
Diaspora
with that. That's
United.
awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be wild. I can't believe that, but it's Diaspora UTD on Twitter. We're going to try to have a lot of content there as far as podcasts. We're going to try and write some things as well, group previews, reactions to things. We're going to cover this World Cup because it deserves it and it's fun and it's going to be a fun time. So go there. We'll have some other stuff that'll pop up. Probably going to start a newsletter at some point. I probably should have done that a long time ago, but whatever. Follow the socials and you'll see it all.
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, you should have led with that. That's awesome. That's kind of
I still
bucket
can't
list.
believe it. That's probably why.
Yeah, right. That's the bucket list type stuff. So yeah, make sure you follow Andre and the Diaspora United podcast. They're awesome. I love the highlights. I love the commentary. Great follow on Twitter. So make sure you do that. Make sure to leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe to us on all the major social media platforms at 4040 Vision Pod. Thanks, y'all. Peace out.